Hey, what's up guys? It's Sos here, and welcome back to Concise Classes, the series where I give you the no BS overview of the class you want to play. So, today's class is going to be Zero. Let's jump right into it. Zero is two people, Alpha and Beta. Alpha is the male one, Beta is the female one. They have shared skills. Let's go over what they are. Dual combat. This is very important. If you swap from one to the other, you get what's called tag. What tag is the other form that you're not in will assist you with their skills. So if I'm in alpha form and I swap to beta's form, alpha will assist for 3 seconds. I can then swap back and beta will assist for 3 seconds. To keep up your maximum DPS, you're going to want to keep this up at all times. This means you're swapping every 3 or so seconds. But don't worry about that, we'll go over it later. One important thing to note is, as far as I can tell so far, you are going to need a skill cooldown hat. That is all. Continuing on. Double time. So we're in the shared skills and the transcendent skills. Double time. When a skill is on cooldown, because all but 2 of Zero's skills have cooldowns. If you use another skill, it will reduce the current cooldown. This does not include 5th job skills, the transcendent skills, which we'll go over in a moment. So keep that in mind. Now, it also has 2 other things. Alpha and Beta have 2 other skills that are passive. Each time Alpha attacks, he will gain a stack of double time recon. For every stack, he's gaining 2% crit, and this goes for both. As long as those stacks stay up, he will gain 20% crit rate. Now, what's important to note about that is that it lasts for 20 seconds, so you have a large window and it is affected by buff duration. If you swap to Beta and max her up to 10 stacks, just a little slower, but hang on, gain 1% damage 10 times, so that's 10% damage, and then if you max her stacks out to the 10, you gain 1 attack speed, which is pretty big to keep up at all times. Anyway, that's something to note for later. Time distortion. So what this is it sets up an aura. Anything in this aura takes an additional 25% damage, and it will nullify abnormal status effects. If your party members are inside of it, they will gain +1 attack speed. I am unsure if you also gain the attack speed, but you'll gain enough attack speed later where it doesn't exactly matter. Moving on to time holding. You're invincible for 15 seconds. That's pretty much all you need to know about it. However, if you would like to know, it will reset all that aren't 5th job skills cooldowns. So we'll show that in a second. Rewind. This is a passive toggle on off. You revive yourself and become invincible for 2 seconds. That's all it is. Very simple. Not affected by any type of cooldown resets. It's a stagnant 1800 second cooldown. Shadow Rain. Now, this is just going to summon a ton of blades from the sky. It's going to do that. Pretty flashy, does good damage. However, 300 second cooldown unless you use the previously mentioned time holding. We use time holding, we get the rock above to know that we're invincible. Your health and time force, which is your mana, goes gray. And you can use it again without having to wait the cooldown. But now you have to wait the cooldown, so tough luck. Moving on, focus time. This works just like Echo of Hero, 4% attack and magic stack for the next 40 minutes with a 2-hour cooldown. So that's all of their transcendent skills. Now, they have two passives, well, toggle on-offs, I guess, technically. Divine Force and Divine Speed. Divine Force, don't even remember that it's there, okay? Ignore it. Divine Speed is what you're going to use. It's +1 attack speed for you and people near you. You get speed and jump too, but let's be real, those stats stop mattering like after the red update or whatever. I don't really remember. I think it was post Big Bang. They didn't really matter. So who cares? It's for the attack speed +1. First jump. This is your flash jump. However, you can also double tap up, down, left, or right, and you will instantly teleport. I shouldn't say teleport because it won't go through Lotus lasers. That is something to note. It's more of a dash. And Reen's protection. This is Maple Warrior, except for zeros. I know, it's kind of crazy. Resolute time just passively increases shit. Now, let's go over how the skills work. Rising Slash and Moonstrike are the only two skills that don't have a cooldown. Now, there are also sets of skills. Rising Slash goes with Air Raid and Air Riot. So, if we were to use that, Rising Slash, Air Raid, and that burst there is Air Riot. Moonstrike, Piercing Thrust, Shadow Strike. These are the only two spammable skills for zeros. However, you're really not going to use them. I'm sure you can hear the plane. I'm glad it decided to fly right over the house. Really helps the recording. Life hint: don't live near an Air Force base. There you go. Life hint is over. Anyway, your main mobbing skills, because that's what's important. Windcutter and its set. Giga Crash and its set. And you might be wondering why Giga Crash, and that's because you can see there it says assist skill is Windcutter, and Windcutter's the actual mobbing skill. So that's why you use that. So while that's on cooldown, you tag to Giga Crash and you use that. The assist skill will use all of them, and then you swap back, and of course you use Windcutter. So that is how you mob, and real quick, let's show you how that works. Typically, you want to find long 2-platform maps, come to one side, and this is where you'll sit for the rest of your life. So, Windcutter, you use the full thing. It's going to drop this glowy stuff on the ground, which is pretty great. Now, of course, it wipes it all out. And this is what you do. You go back, and you go forth between the two. Just keep using it, because the glowy stuff on the ground does good damage. Ideally, you want to be able to one-shot with the glowy stuff on the ground. However, it's not absolutely necessary as long as you clear everything with your tornadoes. So, that is how you mob. You switch between Windcutter and Giga Crash, back and forth. This will also keep you at the maximum amount of, what was it, double time stacks. So, keep that in mind. Anyway, they do have other skills, but typically you're not going to use them unless you're using them for cooldown, but we'll show that momentarily. Critical Bind. This is a skill that only beta has. Now, what this does is it binds your target for 4 seconds on a 35-second cooldown. This bind is separate from other binds, so that's something to keep in mind. You can chain that with your 5th job bind, but we'll go over that later. I suppose now we shall show you how to boss with it, so we'll be right back with a boss. Alright guys, so for a boss we have Chaos Zakum. Now remember, before spawning a boss or going into the boss, full stack yourself to both to 10. This is going to be rather important as you get, I mean, look at the attack speed on that from the beta stacks, you know, pretty great. Anyway, let's spawn him in real quick, and we'll show you how to boss. So, loud. Alright, so typically you're going to use Windcutter, and you'll use Giga Crash as your main attack skills. However, when one goes on cooldown, if you're in beta form, typically I tend to use Throwing Weapon to reduce the cooldowns to then swap back to Windcutter, and depending on the boss, I typically will use Rolling Assault. However, it's not necessary, as if there is something like Lotus Lasers or Lucid's Flowers of Death and shit, really don't know what it's technically called. You can use Shadow Strike to reduce the cooldown, so you can do that into Shadow Strike. So that's something to keep in mind. But that's typically how I tend to rotate it. Everybody has their own preferences. I'm not going to say it's the best or the worst, but it is good to know. Let's do that. Rolling Assault, Giga Crash, into Throwing Weapon to fully reduce the cooldowns, back into that, and that's your combo. Hopefully that explains it. I'm sure there's souls in here, so we'll meet you back in Arcana in just a moment. Alright, now that we've returned to Arcana, we have a couple more things to go over. 5th job skills. Very exciting. Really, there's only 2 important ones to know. Chrono Break and Ego Weapon. However, you have Twin Blades of Time and Shadow Flash, which I will explain as well. Let's start with Shadow Flash. What this is you drop a sword. There is one for Alpha and there is one for Beta. They have their own cooldowns. So let's start with Alphas. That's what it is. It comes down, and you can teleport back to it by reactivating it. Beta has one as well, so let's real quick do that. However, it functions essentially the same. Do that, and you can go back to it, doing massive damage. However, typically I don't find myself using it. Moving on, we have Ego Weapon. This is one of the most important skills, as it's completely passive. However, it increases your DPS by quite a lot. Alpha has a version, and Beta also has a version. Let's start with Alpha's version. There it is. So it's those blades that fly out. You can see the cooldown up here is 10 seconds. And that is a shared cooldown. So let's wait for it to finish. And then if we use it, so if the cooldown is off, it depends which attack you use. Let's say we use Beta's. She will have the blades falling from the sky, which personally I find better for mobbing, and Alpha's is better for bossing. However, if you're just going ham, especially in a boss, you probably won't notice which is which. All that you need to remember is that it's increasing your DPS by doing nothing. So that's really the important part. Now, ooh, this is perfect. He's like a fake boss. So let's demonstrate how binding works. So, as we said earlier, 0 has critical bind. Alright, as you can tell, that was the critical bind. That was 4 seconds. And then you can use Chrono Break for a 10-second bind. It's also a full map attack, technically. So, there you go. It'll do that. And at the end, it will attack again. So, let's wait for that. Right, it's a 30-second thing. However, you get passive skills, so let's go for it. While it's active, you get +2 attack speed, 32% final damage, and it will slow enemies by 32% after the bind is done on them. It also does a bunch of damage, and we're about to see the second activation as it ends. Right now. There it is. So, free damage, especially on a boss. Yes, thank you, airplane. Fly right over the house for the second time. Perfect. Anyway, that's Chronos Break. And your final 5th job skill is Twin Blades of Time. What this is just big damage, so you just boom. There you go, it's big damage, that's all it is. And yeah, those are its 5th job skills. It also, like all other ones, has the blessing type of one where it gives 37% attack. And that is not what I thought it was, because I thought it was all stat. You get 37 attack from it, except I'm level 9, so I'm probably getting more than I should. Anyways, just remember 4-0, keep yourself in tag form, and always use those tornadoes, as those are your friends. Keep that glowy shit on the ground, as it will wreck. As long as you can clear before the next wave spawns, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if the glowy stuff is one-shotting, as long as it clears before the next map's spawn comes back in. Anyway, this has been Saucier. I hope you found this guide helpful. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them down in the comments below. And I hope to see you all next time. Take care.